Yemen's Houthis have joined the Iran war, a potentially serious escalation in hostilities. The militant group, which is allied with the regime in Tehran, had been sitting on the sidelines for the first 4 weeks of the conflict, but that has now changed with an attack targeting Israel. This image is reported to show the first missile launched from Yemen as it passed over the occupied West Bank. Israel says it was successfully intercepted and there were no casualties or damage. The Houthis have since claimed they fired a second missile at Israel as well. But does this mark another serious escalation in the Iran war, with potential to cause even more havoc for the international shipping? Let's ask Baraa Shiban from the Royal United Services Institute, a researcher and political analyst on Yemen and the Gulf. You're well placed, Baraa, to tell us, how much does this actually change the war?
So, good evening to you. This is definitely a new phase in the conflict. For Iran, it realizes it doesn't have much options and much capabilities in terms of its ability to retaliate and cause damage on the United States. But however, it realized quite early in this conflict that the economic warfare, putting more strain and more damage on the global economy, could actually be one way to push Trump to maybe wrap this up. It also examined very carefully what President Trump has been doing, trying to calm the markets. Every time he feels that there could be disruption, he makes a code that they're about to end the conflict. Now, with the Houthis joining, it means it will escalate. It means the waterways will be blocked. Now, in addition to the Strait of Hormuz, now you have the Strait of el-Mandeb. If your viewers remember, just almost 2 years ago, when the Suez Canal was blocked and how much damage that caused to the global trade, we would be looking to something similar if the Houthis kept shooting and firing on shipping going through the Red Sea. It also damaged the ability of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because it announced today, and I saw the report via Bloomberg regarding how it's able now to move its production to the western side of Saudi Arabia, so that can they can start targeting oil shipments going through the Red Sea. The Houthis have been in a way waiting. I would say, I don't think they were on the sideline. I think they were more. The question was, when are they going to join the conflict, not if they will join the conflict.
Right, so there's a lot to unpack there. Now, the Houthis did warn, as you would know, that they were ready to join the war just hours before attacking Israel. Here's their spokesperson and what he had to say. He said, "We affirm that our fingers are on the trigger for direct military intervention. The American and Israeli enemies must respond immediately to international diplomatic efforts to halt the aggression against Iran and the countries of the Axis." Now, Baraa, what does that Houthi messaging tell us? How involved could they become in this war?
Well, the Houthis have been very calculated in terms of how will they be involved. Now they are inviting or more striking Israeli targets, and I think that's on purpose because they don't want to shoot on both the US and the Israelis. But I think it's only a matter of time before they also start attacking US targets as well. And in my opinion, and how I've been observing the Houthis, they kind of take this step by step. So now this is the first attack. They will wait, and then they will escalate a little bit more, and then they will escalate a little bit more. Also, they have been taking security precautions because they know that the Israelis would be targeting them next. So their leadership has to be kept safe. They did a kind of a reshuffling within the structure to top up the basically internal intelligence and so on. So it's more of a prep waiting, getting things ready, getting the basically in-house in order before they start attacking the United States. And I think it's only a matter of time. We are looking into a new phase, and it is a war of attrition, basically. They know Trump doesn't have much time. We're coming towards midterms very soon, and they do have the time, and they can try to tell him, we can exhaust you in another front.
Timing is a common theme, if I read between the lines of a lot of what you're saying here. The Houthi spokesman referred as well to the diplomatic efforts to end the war. Now that the Houthis are involved, could that increase Iran's leverage when and if we get to that moment when peace talks are actually happening?
Well, the Iranians had invested a lot in the Houthis' capabilities, especially long-range capabilities, drones, ballistic missiles. They also helped with their logistics in terms of maritime attacks and so on. And they have invested in the group for the last decade. And now it's time for them to start using some of their investment. And at the beginning, I think they wanted to see if President Trump is going to end the conflict. Is he's going to be satisfied with the level of destruction he had caused on the IRGC? But if not, then they will try to open another front. And we know that Hezbollah has now been involved in the conflict, and it's not about how much damage. They know the groups have been, especially like Hezbollah, has been severely degraded. But it's about the amount of exhaustion, the amount of multiple fronts you're opening for the United States and Israel on multiple arenas.
Baraa, tell us, if you could, about the group's links to Iran. You mentioned a little of it. To what extent do the Houthis take orders from Tehran? You used Hezbollah as an example or as a reference. How close is that relationship between the Houthis and Iran?
Well, they've developed their relationship over the years. So when it first started, the Houthis initially received training and arming from Hezbollah at the beginning. The IRGC at the beginning were liaising via Hezbollah for quite some time. And then IRG officers started to arrive to Yemen, especially the technical capacity, proliferation of armed drones, their capacity to build or bring together ballistic missiles, long-range capabilities, so they can strike Saudi Arabia oil infrastructure, for example, during the last decade. And then the links with the group has been just getting stronger and stronger. And now they are in a position that the Houthis feel that they've become strong enough. They feel they are going to be, if you'd like to say, the natural new member of the axis of resistance, maybe even replacing Hezbollah in terms of their importance. They enjoy the fact that they have control over a large territory in Yemen, and the ground warfare that they had received. They received special training from Hezbollah operatives who had also years of experience fighting Israel along the Lebanese-Israeli border. So in a way, you could see it's a group that have accumulated expertise, military capabilities of the entire axis of resistance, if you'd like to say, and now you have it with one group, and they have, of course, ability to recruit huge numbers of people due to the basically dire humanitarian situation that exists in Yemen today.
And one big reason for the Houthi involvement, and the reason it's significant, you already mentioned it at the top, is because of the group's ability to disrupt global shipping. The Houthis could play a critical role in the war if they start targeting vessels in the narrow Bab el-Mandeb Strait, connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and beyond. As Iran blocks most shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, countries have scrambled for alternative routes. The Strait of Bab el-Mandeb has become crucial for Saudi Arabian oil exports in particular, which have been rerouted to the Red Sea port of Yanbu. In this map, we can see a broad overview of the tanker traffic in the region on Saturday. The red arrows depict individual vessels, the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil normally passes. Just 7 tankers were recorded sailing through it over the previous days, down from a historical daily average of 138. So shipping exports have begun referring to the Strait as Tehran's toll booth. So this now becomes a critical question as it relates to the Red Sea, the 4th largest shipping route. Do the Houthis have the capacity to block the Bab el-Mandeb Strait?
So when you're targeting shipping like the Houthis have been doing, they don't need to sink and target every ship going through the Red Sea. If they just damage 1 or 2, that would basically lead to the oil prices to jump up the roof. And also insurance companies will be very hesitant to providing insurance, or at least it's going to be a huge cost regarding any ship going through Bab el-Mandeb, because you have that risk. And as you know very well, markets, they don't like war. Big economies don't like war. So any disruption, just the factor of risk in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is enough to deter many shipping companies and insurance companies from doing, or providing the service. So we could be looking into possibility of huge damage on the stock market very soon. And again, they know that Trump doesn't have much time unless he's willing to go through the midterms and then try to rally the American public on why this is necessary and why do they need to continue in this conflict. But so far, I don't think the public opinion in the United States are very supportive of this conflict.
Or does it matter what means they have to employ to try and block it? Are we talking about mines? We heard a lot about mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Does it matter what equipment they've got, or is it more just the threat that they could do it at this point?
Well, the Houthis, first of all, they enjoy the attention that is being brought to them. So, of course, this is going to be on the top of the news. I've been watching and reading almost all news outlets today, and that's an advantage for the Houthis. The more that people talk about them, the more they are a threat. That threat becomes a reality. And then they do have years of experience regarding damaging ships going through the Red Sea. And there was a period when they were targeting Emirati shipments, Saudi ships going through the Red Sea. Before basically October 7th, blew up and they started to get involved in that conflict. But again, it is that threat, that risk. They video taped themselves. They published those very calligraphed, movie-like style of them blowing up the old ships. There was a Greek ship that they bombed just, I think it was last year. So yeah, the Houthis are able to cause that threat, and just the fact that the risk is enough to cause chaos and fear to the stock market and to the oil prices.
So if the rebels step up their involvement in the war, it could further disrupt shipping through critical maritime routes and apply greater pressure on Israeli air defences, particularly its stock of missile interceptors. Let's remind our viewers quickly that a year ago, the US launched a campaign of intense airstrikes against the Houthis. On the first day of the operation, dozens of strikes hit Houthi targets in Yemen, killing 53 people. Donald Trump said at the time that the attacks hit Houthi bases, missile systems and leaders, and were intended to defend US shipping and military assets. So I guess the natural next question for you, Baraa, how much did that US operation damage the Houthis' military capabilities a year ago, now that we know the Houthis are at the very least still able to strike at long range?
So the Houthis did face quite a huge blow, especially in June of last year, when the top military chief was killed in an Israeli airstrike. And also we had the period which you just mentioned at the beginning of last year, when the United States carried out quite intensive air campaign against Houthi targets. So they realize the moment they announce joining the war, it's going to be something similar. And I think that's why they've been very careful. They've been very calculated into stepping into this conflict one step at a time. But also they didn't rush to announce joining the war from day one. And that's in order to put the internal and security arrangements for the leadership, put the order together. And the leadership would be the main concern for the Houthis. He made an announcement and a speech before yesterday. And then we have the spokesperson who did the main announcement just yesterday, and in it they did say that any ships that go through the Red Sea that will be targeting Iranian infrastructure or Iranian targets, those ships will be targeted. So it looks like they are willing. There is an appetite to step to get more involved in the conflict, but one step at a time.
One last one before we go. It was a common assertion pointed at the White House that the US underestimated Iran's ability to hit back and their ability in general. Did the US underestimate the Houthis?
I think for the Houthis, unlike the IRGC, which actually looked like it was very much infiltrated to its core, the Israelis, especially during the 12-day war, literally in day one or in the first hour, showed that they had infiltrated IRGC top commanders. They assassinated many of the top leadership, and similar thing happened this time when they killed the supreme leader in the first hour of this conflict. With the Houthis, there's still that lack of information. Israel built its intelligence capacity, its infiltration mechanisms with the IRGC and Hezbollah, by the way, for quite a long time. The Houthis are kind of a new player, so they enjoy that ambiguity. Not a lot of people know much about them, and that's why if the United States or Israel would like to get more information, they're going to have to deal with the people who have been fighting the Houthis for quite a long time, like the Saudis, like the Emiratis, and like the Yemeni government. But all of those at the moment don't have an appetite to join a conflict. The narrative that the Trump administration is providing is not convincing to the American people first, before you're trying to convince your allies in the region. This is why you need to join this conflict. And they've been very hesitant, as you know, even after being hit by Iran multiple times.
Baraa Shiban, a researcher and political analyst on Yemen and the Gulf from the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies. It's been fascinating to get your insights as the Houthis enter the war at the side of Iran. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right, so wasting no time, let's move on to our next guest. I want to focus on the shipping element particularly here with Benjamin Schmitt, a former European Energy Security Advisor from the US Department of State, now Senior Fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. Benjamin, the perfect person, I would say, to tell me how bad this could get. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has been a really traumatic event for the world economy already. What happens if the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb is closed on top of that?
I mean, if the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb on top of the Strait of Hormuz are closed at the same time, we would be looking at an oil shock, the likes of which we haven't seen possibly ever. Because remember, at that point, you would be losing the Suez Canal as a critical energy security conduit for the world. And I think you're already seeing quite a bit of shipping being rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope. And I've seen estimates that a lot of shipping companies are deciding to just go in that direction and set up supply chains that are going around all of Africa. And that's going to slow things down quite a bit. Again, if you close both of those straits at the same time, that is a massive, massive hit to the global economy, and especially the energy economy.
Your qualifications mean that you would have played out these scenarios as part of your work, I would guess. Would the US and Europe have much of a backup plan for just this scenario?
Well, look, I wasn't specifically focused on either of these straits in my work. I was focused on Northern Europe, the Baltic Sea, and if I was talking about any straits, it was the Kattegat with Denmark. But that said, we look at choke points around the world in energy security work, and you look at everything from the Straits of Hormuz, the Straits of Malacca, you look at the Suez Canal, obviously, and the Panama Canal and things like this. All of these have to operate, right? And so there's a significant amount of security attention and, frankly, military security attention taken to focus on making sure these geopolitical environments remain stable, that the military security side of things are taken care of, so that those energy security and the the oil and gas especially can get through and move through global shipping. But this is a situation that, frankly, we just haven't seen at this scale in any recent memory. Obviously, we had last year the Houthis shutting down the Red Sea route to the Suez Canal through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Quite a few ships. Obviously, some ships were getting through. Chinese ships in particular, I believe, were getting through. But it's kind of the same situation in Straits of Hormuz now, where Iran is picking and choosing which ships get through and which get targeted. So you had that happened last year in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea. You have this conflict going on, the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran that's closing the Straits of Hormuz, or of course, Iran is the one closing the straits. But to have those both at the same time, I mean, we're really looking at a world of hurt when it comes to the global economy.
To a non-expert in this field, Benjamin, it did strike me as strange how quickly, a matter of weeks, it took the world economy to go into shock after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Does it ever shock you how little time there is between a supply disruption and chaos in the energy market?
Well, it should be surprising because, in my personal opinion, I think a lot of these initial market shocks were kind of reading the headlines. I think that you can easily say that a lot of the changes in upward pressure on the cost of oil, that certainly was reacting to trying to read the tea leaves of where the Trump administration, and frankly reacting to Trump's very mercurial statements, to say the least, were going, right? You had situations over the past few weeks where the Brent crude price would be up and down by $20 in a several hour period of time, based on posts that Trump would have on Truth Social, based on these kind of statements back and forth between the U.S. and Iran, and really we didn't see a supply security threat so much at that point. Now we're seeing that supply security threat really grow, right? Because this has been a protracted conflict. So at the same time that we're seeing these reactions in the market due to the geopolitical and the security situation, the kinetic strikes against of Iran last week against Qatari and Kuwaiti and Omani facilities, not to say nothing of an Aramco facility in Saudi Arabia, all of these have come together and really driven this market to have a lot of upward pressure.
And not for the first time in the last month, I want to close that triangle between oil price, Donald Trump, and potentially Vladimir Putin being the only winner here?
Well, the Ukrainians are doing their work to make sure that Putin can't cash in on this upward oil price to a great extent, right? I mean, we're just focusing for a moment back on the Middle East. We've seen a lot of the oil that's stuck in the Straits of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf that's not able to get through. A lot of those suppliers, to the greatest extent possible, have tried to push their exports through Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia basically exporting into the Red Sea. If the Houthis are able to close that down as well, then you're going to have a really big escalation in terms of not only the military conflict broadening, but the oil price. And that's where Vladimir Putin comes in, because, okay, they have their shadow fleet. They can try to move these uninsured and dangerous tankers around the world to get them to global markets where they, don't care about sanctions. That said, the Trump administration waived sanctions on these shadow fleet vessels for, or at least, the Russian Urals crude grade oil until the second week in April right now. And so, you really do have a situation in which Vladimir Putin can cash in, but the Ukrainians, as I said, are trying to do their best part to stop that through kinetic military means. You've seen strikes day after day at Ust-Luga, the loading facility near St. Petersburg in the Baltic Sea, at the head of the Gulf of Finland, and those are really slowing down Russia's ability to get oil out of the Baltic Sea. And so, again, I think you're going to continue to see this energy dimension of the war, which I think is first and foremost, reinforcing to us that energy security is national security. National security and military security planners need to have energy as a core component of their planning, because otherwise you can't just basically roll out your military strategy and have any hope to have political or geopolitical shocks, remain in the background.
And we know Donald Trump is pretty sensitive to what happens in the markets. Before we go, one quick one. Do you want to take a guess at what happens when markets open on Monday?
I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be pretty, especially if the Houthis continue to, start to target vessels. They've obviously targeted over the past 24 hours Israeli facilities through kinetic strikes from Yemen to Israel. But if they start turning that to a maritime dimension, that's going to be really bad for the markets before opening bell on Monday morning. To say nothing of some of the headlines that we're seeing burble up right now about the potential for ground troops to be deployed, right? That still hasn't been ruled out by the Trump administration. I think if that happens, you're going to see a significant market shock, because then both on the oil side and on just the broader economic side, markets and traders are going to price in the assumption that this is going to be a very long, protracted conflict, more than a couple more weeks, as the Trump administration keeps trying to say that could be possible.
Benjamin Schmitt, a former European energy security advisor from the US Department of State, now senior fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. Great to get your thoughts at this really tense moment for the global energy market.
Thanks so much. We'll keep looking at it. Thanks, and great to be on DW.
So then, what's about to unfold for the energy markets? Is it more chaos to come, or have Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump got things firmly under control? Let us know down below. Bye for now.